The sun-scorched horizon of Wyoming territory shimmered like a mirage as Sophia Morgan stood on the newly constructed platform of Sweetwater Station, clutching her valise with white knuckles. It was 1878, and the frontier town sprawled before her was nothing like the bustling streets of Boston she'd left behind. Dust, devil's world between wooden buildings, their facades bleached by relentless sun and adorned with faded advertisements for everything from tobacco to snake oil remedies. Sophia adjusted her traveling hat, a fashionable but practical piece that had seen better days after the arduous journey west. The train belched steam behind her, its iron wheels already turning as it prepared to continue its journey, carrying dreams and desperation in equal measure across the expanding nation. Miss Morgan, a weathered man with a silver badge, approached. "Sheriff Wilkins, welcome to Sweetwater. Your uncle sent word of your arrival." "Thank you, Sheriff." Sophia nodded politely, though her heart sank at the reminder of why she'd come to this forsaken place. Her uncle's letter had been brief. Her aunt was ailing, and they needed help with their mercantile and the ledgers. With her father's recent passing and the family finances in ruins, she had little choice but to accept. The sheriff tipped his hat. "I'd escort you myself, but there's been trouble at the Silver Dollar. Your uncle sent his neighbor to collect you." He gestured toward a tall figure leaning against a hitching post. The man straightened as they approached, and Sophia felt her breath catch despite herself. He wasn't what she expected in this rough country. Tall and broad-shouldered, yes, but there was a quiet intelligence in his blue eyes that belied the typical frontier roughness. His dark blonde hair curled slightly beneath a well-worn Stetson, and while his clothes showed signs of hard work, they were clean and properly maintained. "Miss Morgan," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Ryan Blackwood. Your uncle asked me to bring you to town." There was something in his voice, a hint of formal education, perhaps, that seemed at odds with the leather holster strapped to his thigh and the sun-weathered skin of his face and hands. "Mr. Blackwood." She nodded, maintaining the proper distance of strangers. He reached for her valise. "May I? I'm quite capable," she replied, but relinquished it nonetheless when she saw the amusement in his eyes. "Never doubted it for a moment, Miss Morgan." He gestured toward a wagon hitched to two sturdy horses. "Your trunks will be delivered later. Hope you don't mind the wagon. The road to town isn't suitable for finer transportation." Sophia eyed the vehicle skeptically. "I've come this far, Mr. Blackwood." "I doubt the last few miles will be my undoing." He smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "Your uncle mentioned you had spirit. Is that what he called it?" she asked dryly. Ryan offered his hand to help her onto the bench. She hesitated before accepting, conscious of the strength in his grip and the calluses that spoke of honest labor. "Been in Wyoming long, Mr. Blackwood?" she asked as he climbed up beside her and took the reins. 5 years, he replied, clicking to the horses. "Came west after the war." "You fought?" she asked, studying his profile. He didn't look old enough to have served in the war between the states. Last year of it, was barely 18. His expression clouded momentarily. Enough time to see things no man should. Sophia nodded, understanding that some wounds weren't visible. Her father had returned from the war a changed man, his merchant's optimism replaced by a haunted look that never fully faded. "And now you're a cowboy?" she asked, noting his attire. He chuckled. "Among other things." "I've got a small spread about 2 miles outside town, raise horses mostly, do some ranching. Read law books at night, a cowboy lawyer." She couldn't hide her surprise. "Not yet, just studying. Man needs dreams out here, Miss Morgan, otherwise the land will swallow him whole." The wagon bumped along the rutted trail, and Sophia gripped the seat to steady herself. The vast openness of Wyoming stretched in every direction, a sea of grass and sage beneath an endless blue sky, so different from the confined streets and crowded buildings of Boston. "It's rather overwhelming," she admitted, gesturing to the landscape. "Too much?" he asked. "No," she said thoughtfully, "just different. There's a kind of terrible beauty to it." He nodded appreciatively. "Most Easterners just see emptiness." "I see possibility," she said, then quickly added, "though I don't intend to stay long, just until my aunt recovers and they can find proper help." Sweetwater has a way of changing plans, Ryan remarked. People come meaning to pass through find themselves putting down roots. Not me, Sophia said firmly. I don't believe in setting permanent stakes. Life has taught me that nothing lasts. Ryan glanced at her, curiosity in his gaze. Sounds like there's a story there. No story, just experience. She straightened her skirts. My father believed in forever. Built a business, a reputation, a future all washed away with one poor investment. My mother believed in forever too, died of influenza when I was 12. Forever is just a pretty notion for people who haven't been disappointed yet. The wagon crested a small rise, and suddenly the town of Sweetwater came into view, a collection of wooden buildings straddling the main road, with scattered homesteads dotting the surrounding prairie. Looks small, Sophia observed. It is, Ryan agreed. But growing, railroads brought new folk. Your uncle's store does good business. And what do you need a lawyer for in such a small place? She asked. Property disputes, water rights, cattle rustling. Progress brings complications, Miss Morgan. He guided the horses down the slope. People need someone who understands both the law and the land. As they approached the town, Sophia could see people moving about, their business women in practical dresses carrying market baskets, men in work clothes or suits depending on their station, children darting between buildings in carefree play. The mercantile is there. Ryan pointed to a 2-story wooden structure with Morgan's general merchandise painted in fading letters across the front. Your uncle lives above the store with your aunt. And where is your ranch, Mr. Blackwood? North of town. Best grazing land in the county. There was pride in his voice. Built the house myself. Impressive, she acknowledged. It's modest, but it's mine, paid for free and clear. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the mercantile. Here we are, Miss Morgan. Welcome to your temporary home. The door of the store opened, and a tall, thin man with graying hair emerged, his face breaking into a smile. Sophia, her uncle called. Thank the Lord you've arrived safely. Ryan jumped down from the wagon and extended his hand to help her descend. This time she took it without hesitation, noticing how his hand lingered just a moment longer than necessary. Thank you for the escort, Mr. Blackwood, she said formally. Ryan, he corrected. Folks use first names here, Miss Morgan. Less formality, more honesty. Then I suppose you should call me Sophia, she replied, surprising herself with the concession. Sophia, he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. Welcome to Wyoming territory. I hope you find what you're looking for here. I'm not looking for anything, Mr. Black Ryan, she corrected herself. Just fulfilling a family obligation. He smiled, and there was something in his expression that suggested he didn't quite believe her. We'll see, was all he said before tipping his hat and turning to her uncle. Thomas, I'll be by tomorrow with those supplies you ordered. Much obliged, Ryan, her uncle replied, then turned to Sophia with open arms. Come, niece, your aunt is beside herself with excitement. As Sophia followed her uncle into the store, she couldn't help glancing back to see Ryan Blackwood watching her go, his expression thoughtful. She quickly looked away, telling herself that the flutter in her stomach was merely the result of a long journey and nothing to do with a pair of blue eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. The next morning dawned with a clarity that made Sophia blink in surprise as she opened the small window of her attic bedroom. The sky was an impossible blue, and the air carried a crispness that filled her lungs like cold spring water. Below, the main street of Sweetwater was already alive with activity, horses and wagons moving through, shopkeepers sweeping their wooden sidewalks, and cowboys gathering at the far end of town where the saloon stood. Her Aunt Martha lay in the bedroom on the second floor, her face pale against the pillows but her eyes bright with intelligence and curiosity. The inflammation in her joints had worsened over the winter, making it impossible for her to manage the stairs to the store. Uncle Thomas did his best, but the bookkeeping had fallen behind and customers complained about disorganization. You're a godsend, Sophia, Aunt Martha said, patting her hand. Thomas tries, bless him, but numbers make his head spin. I'm happy to help, Sophia replied and meant it. The ledgers were in disarray, but nothing she couldn't sort out with time and patience. After breakfast, She tied a simple apron over her dress and went downstairs to begin organizing the mercantile. The bell above the door chimed regularly as customers entered, ranchers' wives picking up supplies, cowboys purchasing tobacco, and children sent for penny candy. Sophia served them all with efficiency, marking each transaction carefully in the daybook. Shortly after noon, the bell chimed again, and she looked up to see Ryan Blackwood entering, his tall frame filling the doorway. He carried several large packages wrapped in brown paper. "Afternoon, Sophia," he said, the familiar use of her name sending an unexpected warmth through her. "Brought those supplies for your uncle." "He's out back," she replied, gesturing toward the storeroom. "I can take those." "They're heavy," he cautioned, but surrendered them when she held out her arms. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Sophia nearly dropped the packages at the unexpected jolt that passed between them. "Careful," Ryan said, steadying her arms with his hands. "I'm fine," she insisted, stepping back quickly. "Just lost my balance for a moment." His eyes held hers, and she had the unsettling feeling he could read her thoughts. "Of course," he said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "How are you finding Sweetwater?" "It's different," she admitted, setting the packages on the counter, "but the people have been kind." "Small towns can be that way. Everyone knows your business, but they also know when you need help." He glanced around the store. "You've made progress. Store looks better organized already." "There's still much to do," she said, oddly pleased by his observation. "Perhaps you'd like to see more of the area," he suggested. "Sunday after church, I could show you some of the prettier spots, might make your stay more pleasant." Sophia hesitated. The proper response would be to decline. She barely knew this man, and she wasn't looking to form attachments. Yet something in his straightforward offer appealed to her. "I wouldn't want to take you away from your work," she said. "Sundays for rest," he replied. "Even cowboys observe that much, at least after morning chores." Before she could answer, the bell chimed again, and 3 cowboys entered, their spurs jingling against the wooden floor. They nodded respectfully to Sophia but eyed Ryan with clear recognition. "Blackwood," the tallest one acknowledged. "Thought you'd be at the North Pasture today." "Finished early, Jackson. Brought in supplies for Mr. Morgan." Ryan's posture had subtly changed. Sophia noticed more alert, though still relaxed. "Convenient timing," Jackson said with a smirk, his eyes sliding to Sophia. "Don't believe we've had the pleasure, madam." "This is Miss Morgan, Thomas's niece from Boston," Ryan said before she could speak. "Sophia, these are the Jackson brothers. They work for the Circle B ranch east of town." "Madam," the 3 men touched their hats in unison. "Gentlemen," she nodded, noting the way the eldest watched Ryan with barely concealed hostility. "You need something or just browsing?" Ryan asked, his tone pleasant but with an edge. "Need cartridges," the eldest Jackson said. "And maybe some advice on water rights, counselor." There was a mocking emphasis on the last word that made Sophia frown. "I'm not qualified to give legal advice," Ryan said evenly, "but Judge Parker will be through next month if you have matters to settle." "Too long to wait when cattle are thirsty," Jackson replied, "but we'll manage, always do." The tension in the store was palpable as Sophia retrieved the requested ammunition and wrapped it carefully. The transaction completed, the Jackson brothers departed with final nods that seemed more challenge than courtesy. "Friends of yours?" she asked when they were gone. Ryan's smile was wry. "Hardly. Circle B's been trying to expand for years. They don't appreciate independent ranchers like me holding onto prime water access." "Is that dangerous?" she asked, concerned by the undercurrent she'd witnessed. "This is cattle country," he said simply. "Water means survival." But the Jacksons are more bluster than action. They respect the law, even if grudgingly. Uncle Thomas emerged from the storeroom, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Ryan, didn't hear you come in." "Just dropped off those supplies you ordered," Ryan replied. "And was asking your niece if she might like to see some of the countryside on Sunday after services." Thomas raised his eyebrows, glancing between them. "That sounds like a fine idea. Sophia's been cooped up in this store since she arrived." "I haven't agreed yet, Uncle," Sophia reminded him, though without much conviction. "You should go," Thomas encouraged. "Ryan knows every hill and valley for 50 miles. You'll be perfectly safe." The implication that safety was her concern made Sophia bristle slightly. I was more concerned about propriety, uncle. Take Martha's old shotgun if it makes you feel better, Thomas chuckled, though I doubt you'll need it with Ryan. Ryan's eyes crinkled with amusement. I promised to have her back before sundown, Thomas. Just thought she might appreciate seeing more than the inside of the mercantile. Sophia found herself cornered by their well-meaning insistence. Very well, she conceded. Sunday after church, Ryan's smile was warm enough to melt the last of her resistance. I'll bring the wagon around at noon. Wear practical shoes if you have them. He touched his hat in farewell. Ladies, Thomas. After he'd gone, Thomas gave Sophia a speculative look. Ryan's a good man, one of the best in these parts. I'm not looking for a man, good or otherwise, Sophia replied firmly. I'll be returning to Boston once Aunt Martha is recovered. Thomas's expression grew serious. Sophia, there's something we need to discuss about that, but later. For now, enjoy your Sunday outing. It'll do you good to see some of God's country with someone who appreciates it. Sunday arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, and a gentle breeze that kept the summer heat bearable. Sophia sat through the church service conscious of Ryan's presence several pews behind her, his deep voice joining in the hymns. She'd chosen her simplest day dress, a blue cotton with minimal trim, and had, after some debate, found an old pair of half boots that would serve for walking. When the service ended, she said goodbye to her aunt and uncle and found Ryan waiting outside with a buggy rather than the wagon she'd expected. Thought this might be more comfortable, he explained, helping her up. It's very considerate, she admitted, settling onto the padded seat. He'd clearly made an effort. She noted his clothes were his Sunday best, and the buggy was freshly cleaned. They drove north out of town, the buildings giving way to open prairie dotted with wildflowers. Ryan pointed out landmarks as they went: distant mountains, rock formations, and the occasional homestead or ranch house visible on the horizon. It's vast, she observed. How do you not feel lost in all this space? The opposite, he replied. I feel found. In Boston, weren't you surrounded by buildings and people, all pressing in? She considered this. Yes, but that was reassuring, structured, and confining, he suggested. Out here, a person can breathe, can become who they're meant to be without the weight of others' expectations. Or their support, she countered. Community exists here too, he said. Just differently. When winter storms hit or bandits threaten, neighbors ride for days to help each other. It's not proximity that makes community, it's commitment. They traveled for about an hour before Ryan turned the buggy toward a line of cottonwood trees marking a creek bed. As they drew closer, Sophia gasped softly at the unexpected beauty. The creek formed a small pool beneath the trees, creating an oasis of green amidst the prairie browns and golds. This is lovely, she said as he helped her down from the buggy. One of my favorite spots, he admitted, retrieving a basket from behind the seat. Thought we might have a meal here if that suits you. Sophia was touched by his thoughtfulness. You brought food, nothing fancy, Mrs. Callahan at the boarding house packed it for me. He spread a blanket in the shade of the largest cottonwood. Hope you don't mind eating outdoors. It's perfect, she said, surprising herself with her enthusiasm. They sat on the blanket, and Ryan unpacked the basket: cold chicken, bread, cheese, apples, and a jar of lemonade. It was simple fare but delicious in the open air with the sound of water trickling over rocks nearby. Tell me about Boston, Ryan said as they ate. What did you leave behind? Sophia hesitated, then decided honesty was simpler. Not much, truthfully. After father died and the creditors took the house, I was teaching at a girls' school. The position paid enough to survive, but little more. No suitors, he asked, then quickly added, forgive me if that's too personal. There was someone, she admitted. A banker's son. We were informally engaged before father's business failed. Afterward he reconsidered. Ryan's expression darkened. Reconsidered because of money. His family had concerns about financial compatibility, she said with practiced neutrality. In fairness, they weren't wrong. I had nothing to bring to the marriage. Except yourself, Ryan said quietly, which should have been enough. The simple statement touched something deep inside her. That's a rather romantic notion for a pragmatic cowboy. I'm not always pragmatic, he smiled. And money is a poor measure of a person's worth. Says the man who owns land free and clear, she teased gently. He laughed. Fair point, but I started with nothing. Worked cattle drives, saved every penny. What I have, I built. And I'd rather have a partner who understands value than one born to wealth who never questioned its source. Is that why you study law? She asked. To build something more, partly, he acknowledged. Also because out here, law is still taking shape. The right person can help ensure it serves justice, not just power. They talked easily as the afternoon progressed, sharing stories and observations. Ryan told her about his childhood in Pennsylvania, his brief time in the Union Army, and his journey west seeking a fresh start. Sophia found herself speaking more openly than she had with anyone in years about her mother's death, her father's struggles, and her own disappointment in people she trusted. So that's why you don't believe in forever, Ryan said as they walked along the creek bank later. Too many things you counted on didn't last. Precisely, she agreed. Forever is a promise no one can keep. Better to accept that everything is temporary and appreciate it while it lasts. Ryan stopped walking and turned to face her. What if you're wrong? What if some things really can last? Like what? She challenged. This land, he gestured to the prairie stretching around them. It was here long before us, will be here long after. The mountains, the rivers that carved them, the sky above us. Those aren't human things, she argued. People change, feelings change. Not all feelings, he said quietly, his eyes holding hers. Some run deeper than circumstance or convenience. Sophia felt her heart quicken at the intensity in his gaze. You barely know me, Ryan. I know enough to want to know more, he replied simply. And I have time. I don't, she reminded him. I'll be returning to Boston once my aunt recovers. Something flickered in his expression, disappointment perhaps, but he nodded. Of course. But while you're here, I'd like to show you that some things are worth believing in, even if they take time to prove. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten unexpectedly. I should probably return to town, she said, suddenly needing distance from feelings she hadn't anticipated. Of course, he agreed, though she sensed his reluctance. As they walked back to the buggy, his hand brushed hers, and she found herself wishing, just for a moment, that she could believe in the possibilities his touch suggested. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Sophia spent her days organizing the mercantile, updating the ledgers, and caring for her aunt, whose condition improved slowly but steadily. Ryan came to town regularly, sometimes on business, sometimes with transparent excuses that fooled no one, least of all Sophia's increasingly matchmaking aunt and uncle. Despite her initial reservations, Sophia found herself looking forward to his visits. Ryan never pressed, never demanded, but his steady presence and thoughtful conversation became a highlight of her days. He brought books from his personal library, histories, poetry, and legal texts they discussed during quiet moments in the store. He told her stories of the territory, of cattle drives and frontier justice, of the characters who populated the small but growing town. And on Sundays, after church, he took her exploring to hidden valleys where wild horses grazed, to rocky outcroppings with views that stole her breath, to abandoned cabins with histories both tragic and inspiring. With each outing, Sophia felt the walls she'd built around her heart weakening, though she fought to maintain them. One evening in late August, as she sat on the small porch behind the mercantile watching the sunset paint the western sky in impossible colors, Uncle Thomas joined her with 2 cups of coffee. Beautiful, isn't it? He remarked, handing her a steaming cup. Breathtaking, she agreed. We don't see sunsets like this in Boston. Too many buildings, he nodded. Out here, God shows off a bit more. They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Thomas cleared his throat. Sophia, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. The seriousness in his tone made her turn to him with concern. Is Aunt Martha worse? No, nothing like that. She's improving thanks in large part to your help. He took a sip of his coffee. It's about your plans to return east. Has she had a setback? Sophia asked, puzzled. No, but... Thomas hesitated. The truth is, Sophia, we can't afford to hire proper help for the store, not with Martha's medical expenses. When I wrote asking for your assistance, I wasn't entirely forthcoming about our situation." Sophia felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. "What are you saying, Uncle?" "We're in financial trouble," he admitted. "The railroad's been good for business, but competition from the new stores in town has cut into our profits. Martha's condition requires expensive medicines. If you leave, you'll lose the store," she finished for him, understanding dawning. Thomas nodded grimly. "Likely the living quarters too. At our age, starting over isn't really an option." Sophia stared into her coffee cup, processing this new reality. "Why didn't you tell me this when I arrived?" "Pride, I suppose," he sighed. "And hoped that things might improve enough that it wouldn't be necessary, but with winter coming." "I understand," she said quietly, though inside her mind was racing. The teaching position in Boston was long filled by now. She had no home to return to, no prospects waiting. And here were family members who needed her, truly needed her. "We don't want to trap you here," Thomas added quickly. "But if you could stay through winter at least, it would give us time to find alternatives." Sophia nodded slowly. "Of course I'll stay, Uncle. You and Aunt Martha are my only family now." Relief washed over his weathered face. "You're a good girl, Sophia. Your father would be proud." Later that night, lying in her small attic room, Sophia faced the truth she'd been avoiding. The dream of returning to Boston had been just that, a dream, with little substance behind it. What was waiting for her there but memories of disappointment and struggle? Here, at least, she had purpose. And she had. She refused to complete the thought, but Ryan's face appeared in her mind nonetheless. She'd been careful to maintain boundaries, to remind him and herself of her temporary status. Now that had changed, and she wasn't sure whether to feel trapped or relieved. The next morning, she was restocking shelves when the bell above the door announced a customer. She turned to find Ryan standing there, his expression more serious than usual. "Good morning," she greeted him. "You're in town early." "Heard news I thought you should know," he said without preamble. "The Jackson brothers have filed a claim against my water rights. They're saying my dam is reducing their access downstream." Sophia frowned. "Is it true?" "No," he said firmly. "My irrigation system is minimal and well within my legal rights. But they've hired a lawyer from Cheyenne, and the territorial judge won't be through for another month." "What will you do?" she asked, concerned by the worry lines creasing his forehead. "Fight it, of course, but I wanted to warn you the Jacksons might try to pressure me through people I care about." His eyes met hers directly. "They've made comments in town about my frequent visits here." Sophia felt her cheeks warm. "I see." "I don't want to cause problems for you or your family," Ryan continued. "If you'd prefer I keep my distance until this is resolved." "No," she interrupted, surprising herself with her vehemence. "That would be letting them win before the battle's even fought." A smile touched his lips. "You sound like a frontier woman already." "Hardly," she demurred, though his approval warmed her. "But I don't believe in surrendering to bullies, whether they wear bankers' suits or cowboys' spurs." Ryan's expression grew serious again. "They're dangerous men, Sophia, not just to me, but potentially to anyone associated with me." "I'm not afraid," she said, though her heart quickened at the concern in his eyes. "Maybe you should be," he replied softly. "I'd never forgive myself if something happened to you because of me." "Nothing will happen," she assured him, then hesitated before adding, "Besides, it seems I'll be in Sweetwater longer than originally planned." His eyebrows rose. "Oh," briefly, she explained her conversation with her uncle. "So you see, I'm committed at least through winter now." A complex mixture of emotions crossed Ryan's face: sympathy, concern, but also unmistakable hope. "I'm sorry about your uncle's troubles," he said carefully, "but I can't pretend I'm sorry you're staying." The simple honesty of his statement touched her deeply. "Ryan," before she could continue, the door burst open and Sheriff Wilkins entered, his expression grim. "Ryan, trouble at your place. One of your hands rode in, says your barn's burning." Ryan's face hardened instantly. "The Jacksons." "Can't prove anything yet," the sheriff said, "but your man says he saw riders leaving as the fire started." "I need to go," Ryan said, already moving toward the door. He paused, looking back at Sophia with conflicted eyes. "I'm sorry, go," she urged him. "Your property needs you." He nodded once sharply and was gone, the sheriff following close behind. Sophia stood in the suddenly quiet store, her heart pounding with anxiety. The escalation from legal challenges to property destruction was alarming. If the Jacksons would burn a barn, what else might they do? The thought haunted her throughout the day as customers came and went, many bringing rumors and speculation about the fire at the Blackwood Ranch. By closing time, the story had grown to include shootouts and cattle rustling, though Sophia suspected much was exaggeration. Just as she was preparing to lock up, the door opened once more and Ryan entered. His clothes were smoke-stained, his face smudged with soot, but he seemed physically unharmed. "Ryan," she exclaimed, relief flooding through her. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," he assured her, though his voice was rough from smoke. "Lost the barn and some feed, but no animals or people were hurt." "Thank God for that," she said fervently. "Do you know for certain it was the Jacksons?" His expression darkened. "My hand saw 3 riders. Couldn't identify them positively, but the description matches. Sheriffs investigating, but without witnesses willing to testify." "What will you do?" she asked, rebuild. "What else can I do?" He ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of ash. "I won't be driven off my land." Sophia reached for a clean cloth and dampened it at the water barrel. "Here," she said softly, reaching up to wipe a smudge from his cheekbone. "You're covered in soot." He stood perfectly still as she cleaned his face, his eyes never leaving hers. The intimacy of the gesture wasn't lost on either of them, and Sophia felt her pulse quicken at their proximity. "Thank you," he said quietly when she finished, "for this and for not telling me I should give up." "Would that have made a difference?" she asked, knowing the answer. He smiled faintly. "Probably not, but it matters that you understand." "I understand fighting for what's yours," she said. "For what you've built." Ryan's expression softened. "Do you? Because sometimes I wonder if you're still fighting against what could be yours." The directness of his statement caught her off guard. "Ryan, I know," he interrupted gently. "Not the time. I just came to let you know I was all right and to ask you to be careful. The Jacksons have seen us together. If they can't get to me directly, I'll be careful," she promised. "But I won't hide," he nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. "I wouldn't expect you to." He turned to go, then hesitated. "I may not be in town much in the coming days, need to rebuild before winter sets in." "I understand," she said, though she felt a pang at the thought of not seeing him regularly. "Good night, Sophia," he said softly. "Good night, Ryan. Be safe." After he left, Sophia locked the door and leaned against it, her emotions in turmoil. The danger was real, she knew that now. But so were her feelings for Ryan Blackwood, feelings she could no longer deny, even to herself. True to his word, Ryan was scarce in town over the next 2 weeks. Sophia heard updates through customers, and the sheriff, the investigation into the fire had stalled for lack of evidence, and Ryan was rebuilding his barn with help from neighboring ranchers who resented the Jacksons' strong-arm tactics. September brought cooler weather and increased business as ranchers prepared for winter. Sophia threw herself into work, expanding the store's inventory and organizing a small lending library in one corner with books donated by townspeople. It gave her satisfaction to see the space becoming more than just a mercantile, a gathering place, where women exchanged recipes and news while their husbands discussed cattle prices and politics. One evening as she was closing up, the bell chimed, and she looked up expecting to see a last-minute customer. Instead, the eldest Jackson brother stood there, his tall frame blocking the doorway. "We're closing, Mr. Jackson," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the sudden chill that ran through her. "Won't take but a minute of your time, Miss Morgan," he replied, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "Just a friendly conversation." Sophia moved behind the counter, putting the solid oak between them. "What can I help you with?" Jackson removed his hat, revealing thinning hair and calculating eyes. "Been noticing you spend considerable time with Ryan Blackwood." "My associations are my own business, Mr. Jackson," she replied coolly. "Ordinarily, I'd agree," he nodded. "But in this case, you might not have all the facts needed to make an informed choice." "And what facts would those be?" she asked, though she suspected what was coming. "Blackwood's fighting a losing battle," Jackson said bluntly. "That water claim is just the beginning. Circuit Judge is a friend of my family, Blackwood's legal studies won't help him against proper lawyers and proper connections. Is there a point to this, Mr. Jackson? Sophia's patience was wearing thin. Just this, he leaned forward, placing his hands on the counter. Blackwood's going to lose everything. His land, his water, maybe even his freedom if he keeps fighting. Would be a shame if a respectable woman like yourself got caught in the fallout. Anger flared in Sophia, burning away her fear. Are you threatening me, Mr. Jackson? Warning you, he corrected smoothly. As a courtesy, talk some sense into Blackwood. Tell him to sell to us before things get worse, for everyone's sake. I think you should leave, Sophia said, her voice low but firm. Now. Jackson straightened, replacing his hat. Just think about it, Miss Morgan. You're new here, don't understand how things work yet, but you will. He tipped his hat with mock courtesy. Evening, madam. After he left, Sophia's hands trembled as she locked the door. The implicit threat in his words was unmistakable. She needed to tell Ryan, but he was miles away at his ranch, and she had no way to reach him before his next trip to town. She didn't have to wait long. The following morning, Ryan's foreman, a weathered man named Davis, entered the store. Miss Morgan, he greeted her. Boss asked me to deliver a message, said to tell you the barn's rebuilt, and he'd appreciate your company for dinner at the ranch this Sunday, if you're willing. Said your uncle and aunt are welcome too, but he figures they might be tired after church. Sophia hesitated only briefly. Going to Ryan's ranch alone would certainly cause talk, but after Jackson's visit, she needed to speak with him privately. Please tell Mr. Blackwood I accept his invitation, she replied. My aunt isn't well enough for the journey, but I'd be honored to see his home. Davis nodded, a hint of approval in his weathered face. He'll be pleased. Said to tell you he'll send the buggy at noon if that suits. Sunday arrived clear and cool, with the first hints of autumn coloring the prairie grasses gold and amber. After church, Sophia changed into her best day dress, a deep green wool that brought out the amber flecks in her hazel eyes, and waited on the porch for Ryan's buggy. When it arrived, she was surprised to see Ryan himself driving, dressed in a clean white shirt and dark waistcoat beneath his riding coat. I expected your foreman, she said as he helped her up. Wouldn't dream of delegating, he smiled, though she noticed new lines of tension around his eyes. Besides, wanted the chance to talk privately before we reached the ranch. As they left town behind, Ryan's expression grew serious. Sheriff told me Jackson paid you a visit. I'm sorry, Sophia, this is exactly what I was afraid of. You have nothing to apologize for, she assured him. It's not your fault the man is a bully. Did he threaten you directly? Ryan asked, his knuckles whitening on the reins. Not in so many words, she replied carefully. But the implication was clear enough. He wants me to convince you to sell your land. Ryan's jaw tightened. That explains why I received another offer yesterday significantly higher than before, though still below market value. Are you considering it? She asked, studying his profile. No, he said firmly. That land is my future, my legacy. I won't be intimidated into selling. They drove in silence for a few minutes before Sophia gathered her courage. Ryan, what Jackson said about the judge being his friend, is that true? Ryan sighed. Possibly. Judge Harmon does socialize with the Circle B crowd when he's in the territory. But I have to believe he'll rule on the merits of the case, not on personal connections. And if he doesn't, she pressed, then I appeal, Ryan said simply, and keep appealing. The law is on my side, Sophia. It may take time, but justice will prevail. At what cost? She asked softly. Your barn was just the beginning. What if next time it's your house, or worse? He turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense. Are you suggesting I give up? No, she said quickly. I'm just worried. His expression softened. I appreciate that, more than you know. But this is about more than just me or my land. If the Jacksons can drive me out, they'll do the same to every small rancher in the valley. Someone has to stand against them. Why does it have to be you? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Because I can, he said simply. I have the legal knowledge to fight them in court, and enough neighbors willing to stand with me against physical threats. Not everyone has those advantages. Sophia nodded, understanding his sense of responsibility even as she feared for him. Just promise me you'll be careful. I promise, he said solemnly. And Sophia, if you'd rather distance yourself from me until this is resolved, I'd understand completely. Is that what you want? She asked, her heart suddenly pounding. Not even slightly, he admitted, a small smile touching his lips. But I want you safe more than I want you near. I'm not afraid, she told him, though it wasn't entirely true. The Jacksons don't intimidate me. Ryan's smile widened. You know, I actually believe that. You're a remarkable woman, Sophia Morgan. They crested a small rise, and suddenly his ranch spread before them, a modest but well-built house of dressed stone and timber. Corrals containing fine horses, the newly constructed barn, and beyond, rolling pastures where cattle grazed. A small creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwoods showing the first hints of yellow. It's beautiful, Sophia said sincerely. It's home, Ryan replied, pride evident in his voice. Built most of it myself with help from neighbors for the larger projects. As they approached, Sophia could see the signs of prosperity born of hard work, well-maintained fences, healthy livestock, orderly outbuildings. This was no speculator's venture, but a life carefully constructed through dedication and perseverance. I can see why you won't give it up, she said softly. It's not just the land, he replied, guiding the horses toward the house. It's what it represents, the freedom to build something lasting, something that might outlive me. The word lasting hung between them as he brought the buggy to a stop. Sophia accepted his hand as she descended, aware of the calluses that spoke of his labor and the gentleness with which he guided her to solid ground. The house was simple but comfortable, a large main room with a stone fireplace, a well-appointed kitchen where an older woman was preparing dinner, and glimpses of other rooms down a short hallway. Mrs. Winters comes in to cook when I have guests, Ryan explained. Otherwise, I manage for myself. A man of many talents, Sophia observed. Necessity teaches quickly, he smiled. Would you like to see the rest of the house? He showed her through the rooms, his study lined with law books and agricultural journals, 2 bedrooms simply furnished, and a small parlor that was clearly rarely used. Throughout, she noted the quality of craftsmanship and the small touches that made it a home rather than just a dwelling. Hand-woven rugs, shelves of well-read books, a guitar in one corner. You play? She asked, gesturing to the instrument. Poorly, he admitted. But it passes the winter evenings. After the tour, they settled on the front porch with glasses of lemonade while Mrs. Winters completed dinner preparations. The view from the porch encompassed the entire valley, with distant mountains forming a majestic backdrop. I understand now, Sophia said after a companionable silence. Why this land matters so much to you. Ryan nodded. It's not just soil and grass, it's possibility, freedom, the chance to build something meaningful. Like your legal studies, she observed, you're building more than just a ranch. Trying to, he agreed. Out here, a man can reinvent himself, be judged by his actions rather than his background. That's worth fighting for. Even at great risk, she asked. He turned to look at her directly. Some things are worth any risk, Sophia. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. There was no mistaking his meaning. He wasn't just talking about land or legal principles anymore. Ryan, she began, not certain what she wanted to say. You don't have to respond to that, he said gently. I know where you stand. I don't believe in forever. You told me that first day. I haven't forgotten. And you said you'd prove it exists, she reminded him. He smiled. I'm working on it, but proof takes time. Mrs. Winters called them to dinner then, saving Sophia from having to formulate a response. The meal was excellent roast beef, fresh vegetables from Ryan's garden, and apple pie for dessert. They talked easily throughout, about books they'd both read, about the changes coming to the territory with the railroad's expansion, about her plans for the Mercantile's lending library. As twilight approached, Ryan suggested a short walk to see the horses before they needed to return to town. They strolled to the corral where several fine animals gazed at them with intelligent interest. They're beautiful, Sophia said, admiring a chestnut mare who approached for attention. That's Ember, Ryan said, stroking the horse's nose. She's special. Saved her as a foal when her mother died, raised her by hand. The horse nuzzled Ryan's shoulder affectionately, and Sophia was struck by the tenderness in his expression. This was a man who cared deeply about his land, his animals, his principles, and she was beginning to accept about her. "Would you like to try riding sometime?" he asked. "Ember's gentle. I could teach you." The offer represented more than just a riding lesson, and they both knew it. It suggested future outings, ongoing connection, possibilities beyond her temporary stay in Sweetwater. Before she could answer, the sound of approaching horses made them both turn. 3 riders were coming up the long drive at a steady pace, the Jackson brothers, unmistakable even at a distance. Ryan's expression hardened. "Go inside, Sophia, please." "I will not," she replied firmly. "I have as much right to be here as they do." He looked like he wanted to argue but instead sighed. "At least stay behind me." They walked back toward the house, reaching the yard as the Jacksons arrived. The 3 men dismounted, their postures radiating confidence bordering on arrogance. Blackwood, the eldest, nodded curtly. "Miss Morgan, surprised to see you out here, madam." "Mr. Jackson," she acknowledged coolly. "I'm a guest of Mr. Blackwood's." "Risky company these days," Jackson remarked, his gaze shifting to Ryan. "Came to see if you'd reconsidered our offer." "Nothing to reconsider," Ryan replied evenly. "My answer remains no." The middle Jackson brother spat on the ground, mighty stubborn for a man who just rebuilt his barn. "Is that a confession, Peter?" Ryan asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Just an observation," the man replied with a smirk. "Accidents happen, especially to folks who don't listen to reason." Ryan's stance shifted subtly, and Sophia realized he was moving to ensure he remained between her and the Jacksons. "State your business and leave," he said. "You're trespassing." "Business is simple," the eldest Jackson said. "We're offering 30% above our last price, one-time offer. Expires tonight." "Not interested," Ryan replied. "Now get off my land." The youngest Jackson, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "You think you're smart with your law books, Blackwood, but law don't mean much out here when push comes to shove." "That sounds remarkably like a threat, Mr. Jackson," Sophia said before Ryan could respond. "One the sheriff might be interested to hear about." All 3 brothers turned their attention to her, surprise evident in their expressions. "Madam, this ain't your concern," the eldest said, his tone condescending. "You made it my concern when you came into my uncle's store to threaten me," she replied, stepping forward to stand beside Ryan despite his attempt to keep her behind him. "Sophia," Ryan murmured in warning. She ignored him, focusing on the Jacksons. "Let me be clear, gentlemen. Your intimidation tactics won't work, not on Mr. Blackwood and certainly not on me. If anything happens to him or his property, everyone in the territory will know exactly who's responsible." The eldest Jackson's face darkened. "You're making a mistake taking his side." "The mistake," she said firmly, "would be allowing bullies to profit from their misdeeds. Now, as Mr. Blackwood said, you're trespassing. Please leave." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the eldest Jackson laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. "You found yourself a wildcat, Blackwood. Hope she's worth the trouble she's bringing your way." "That's enough," Ryan said, his hand dropping to rest near his holstered gun. "Leave, now." Something in his tone, or perhaps the movement of his hand, finally convinced the brothers. They mounted their horses, the eldest pausing to deliver a final warning. "This isn't over, Blackwood, not by a long shot." They rode away, 3 silhouettes against the setting sun. Sophia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her hands trembling slightly with the aftermath of confrontation. Ryan turned to her, his expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever witnessed, possibly both." "They needed to know their tactics won't work," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "They needed to know," he repeated, shaking his head in disbelief. "Sophia Morgan, you are a force of nature." "Is that a compliment?" she asked, managing a small smile. "Absolutely," he affirmed, then sobered. "But they won't forget this. You've made yourself a target now." "I already was," she pointed out. "At least now they know I won't be intimidated." Ryan gazed at her with an expression that made her heart race. "Do you have any idea how remarkable you are?" Before she could respond, he closed the distance between them and kissed her gently at first, then with growing intensity as she responded. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, and Sophia found herself surrendering to feelings she'd been fighting for weeks. When they finally parted, both breathless, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the day we met," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" she asked, her hands still resting on his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. "You weren't ready," he said simply. "And I was willing to wait until you were." The simple truth of his statement touched her deeply. This was a man who understood patience, who recognized value beyond immediate gratification. "We should return to town," she said reluctantly. "My aunt and uncle will worry." Ryan nodded, though he seemed equally reluctant to end the moment. Of course. The ride back to Sweetwater was filled with a new awareness between them. Ryan held her hand when he wasn't using both for the reins, and Sophia found herself contemplating possibilities she'd previously refused to consider. "What happens now?" she asked as the lights of town appeared in the distance. "That depends on you," Ryan replied. "I know what I want, Sophia. I have from the beginning, but I won't rush you and I won't ask for promises you're not ready to make." "I'm not sure what I'm ready for," she admitted. "Everything's changing so quickly." "Then we'll take it one day at a time," he suggested. "No pressure. No expectations beyond what feels right to you." His willingness to meet her where she was, to accept her uncertainty without demanding resolution, only deepened her growing feelings for him. "Thank you," she said softly. "For understanding. Always," he promised, squeezing her hand gently. As October gave way to November, Sophia and Ryan settled into a new pattern. He came to town more frequently now that the most pressing work of harvest and winter preparation was complete. They spent evenings together at the Mercantile after closing, talking about books and ideas, sharing stories of their lives before Wyoming, and occasionally, when privacy allowed, sharing kisses that grew increasingly difficult to end. The situation with the Jacksons remained tense, but had not escalated further. The circuit judge was expected in mid-November, and both sides were preparing their arguments regarding the water rights dispute. Sophia found herself genuinely happy despite the lingering uncertainties. The Mercantile was thriving under her management, her aunt's health continued to improve, and her feelings for Ryan deepened with each passing day. Only one shadow remained: the question of permanence, of commitment to a future she still struggled to believe in. One crisp November morning, as she was arranging a new shipment of winter goods, Sheriff Wilkins burst into the store, his expression grim. "Sophia," he said without preamble, "there's been trouble. Ryan's been shot." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "What? How badly? Where is he?" "Doc Miller's treating him now," the sheriff replied. "Took a bullet in the shoulder, lost blood, but Doc thinks he'll pull through if infection doesn't set in." "What happened?" she demanded, already untying her apron. "Ambush on the North Trail," Wilkins said grimly. "He was riding into town. Someone fired from the rocks above. Ryan returned fire but didn't hit anyone." "The Jacksons," Sophia stated, not a question. "Can't prove it," the sheriff sighed. "But who else would benefit? Judge arrives tomorrow, without Ryan to argue his case." "He could lose everything," she finished, cold understanding dawning. "Uncle," she called toward the storeroom, "I need to go. Ryan's been hurt." Thomas emerged, concern etching his features. "Go," he said immediately. "We'll manage here." Sophia grabbed her shawl and hurried with the sheriff to the doctor's small office. Inside, she found Ryan lying on an examination table, his face pale beneath his tan, his shirt cut away to reveal a blood-soaked bandage on his left shoulder. "Ryan," she gasped, rushing to his side. His eyes opened at her voice, a weak smile touching his lips. "Sophia, didn't want you to see me like this." "Hush," she said, taking his hand. "You're going to be fine." Dr. Miller, a graying man with kind eyes and capable hands, looked up from preparing fresh bandages. "The bullet went clean through," he reported. "Missed anything vital, but he's lost blood and needs rest." "The hearing," Ryan protested weakly. "Tomorrow, I have to be there." "You have to be alive," the doctor countered firmly. "Moving that arm could start the bleeding again." Despair crossed Ryan's features. "If I don't appear, Jackson's lawyer will argue default. I'll lose everything." Sophia squeezed his hand. "What if someone else presented your case?" Ryan's eyebrows rose. "Who? There's not another lawyer within 100 miles. "Not a lawyer," she agreed. but someone who's read every law book in your library, someone who knows your arguments by heart. Realization dawned in his eyes. Sophia, no, it's too dangerous. The Jacksons already targeted you once. They shot you, Ryan, she reminded him. I think we're past concerns about propriety or danger. She has a point, the sheriff interjected. And Judge Harmon's progressive about such things. Let a woman argue a property case in Cheyenne last year. Ryan looked unconvinced. It's not just about being allowed to speak. The legal arguments are complex. The precedents, which we've discussed at length, Sophia interrupted. Every evening for weeks. I've read your briefs, your notes. I understand the water rights statutes better than most men in this territory. Dr. Miller finished securing the fresh bandage. You need at least 3 days of complete rest, Blackwood. That's not negotiable if you want to keep that arm. Ryan closed his eyes briefly, conflict evident in his expression. When he opened them again, he focused on Sophia with newfound clarity. You do this for me, he asked softly. For us, she corrected, then flushed as she realized the implication of her words. A slow smile spread across his face despite his pain. For us, he repeated. All right, my case files are in the desk at the ranch. Everything you need is there. I'll send someone for them right away, the sheriff offered. And Miss Morgan, I'll personally escort you to and from the courthouse tomorrow. Thank you, Sheriff, she nodded. Now, where will Ryan recover? He can't stay here on that table. There's a room upstairs, Dr. Miller said. He can stay there tonight, but he'll need somewhere quiet for the next several days. He'll stay with us, Sophia decided. Above the mercantile, we have the spare room, and I can tend to him there. Ryan started to protest, but she silenced him with a firm look. This isn't negotiable either, Mr. Blackwood. You've risked everything to fight for what's right. Now it's my turn. The following morning, Sophia stood before the mirror in her small room, adjusting the simple but dignified blue dress she'd chosen for the hearing. Her hands trembled slightly as she pinned her hair into a neat chignon, but her resolve was unwavering. Ryan had been settled in the spare room above the mercantile, feverish but stable. She'd spent most of the night reviewing his case files, ensuring she understood every aspect of his legal argument. The water rights statutes were clear as first settler on the land. Ryan's claim to the creek water took precedence, and his usage was reasonable and non-damaging to downstream properties. The sheriff arrived precisely at 9, and together they walked to the town hall where Judge Harmon would hear cases. Already, a crowd had gathered news of the shooting, and Sophia's intention to represent Ryan had spread through Sweetwater like wildfire. Inside, the Jacksons sat confidently at one table, their Cheyenne lawyer arranging papers with practiced efficiency. Whispers rippled through the room as Sophia entered and took her place at the opposing table, arranging Ryan's files before her with hands that were now, surprisingly, steady. Judge Harmon, a portly man with shrewd eyes and impressive whiskers, raised his eyebrows at the sight of her but made no comment as he called the court to order. I understand Mr. Blackwood is indisposed, he stated, looking at Sophia. And you are? Sophia Morgan, Your Honor, she replied, her voice clear and confident. I'm representing Mr. Blackwood in this matter. The Jacksons' lawyer rose immediately. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The lady has no legal training, neither do you, strictly speaking, Mr. Pemberton, the judge interrupted dryly. You read law under Judge Wilson but never attended formal schooling, at least that's my recollection. The lawyer reddened slightly. Nevertheless, Your Honor, precedent suggests I'm familiar with the precedents, Judge Harmon cut him off again. Including my own ruling in Miller v. Carson last year, if Miss Morgan is prepared to present Mr. Blackwood's case, I'm prepared to hear it. He turned to Sophia. You may proceed, Miss Morgan. For the next 2 hours, Sophia presented Ryan's case with a clarity and precision that clearly impressed the judge. She cited territorial statutes, referenced survey maps, and systematically dismantled the Jacksons' claims of water deprivation. When Pemberton attempted to interrupt or dismiss her arguments, she countered with polite but unyielding rebuttals that earned grudging respect even from the opposition. By noon, Judge Harmon had heard enough. I'll review the documents and render my decision tomorrow morning, he announced. Court is adjourned until then. As the room cleared, the eldest Jackson approached Sophia, his expression unreadable. "Impressive performance, Miss Morgan. Wasted effort, but impressive nonetheless." "Justice doesn't recognize intimidation, Mr. Jackson," she replied evenly. "Not even when it comes in the form of a bullet." His eyes narrowed. "Serious accusation without proof." "Not an accusation," she clarified. "An observation, like your brother made about Ryan's barn." The sheriff appeared at her elbow. "Everything all right here, Miss Morgan?" "Perfectly fine, Sheriff," she assured him, not breaking eye contact with Jackson. Mr. Jackson was just leaving. Jackson touched his hat with mock courtesy. "Until tomorrow, Miss Morgan, give my regards to Blackwood if he's still conscious." The veiled threat sent a chill through Sophia, but she maintained her composure until the Jacksons had left. Only then did she allow the sheriff to see her concern. "What if the judge rules against us?" she asked quietly as they walked back toward the mercantile. "Then Ryan appeals," Wilkins replied simply. "But between us, I think you impressed Harmon. He doesn't suffer fools and he has a strong sense of justice." "Let's hope so," Sophia sighed, "for Ryan's sake." Ryan was awake when she returned, his color slightly better though fever still brightened his eyes. "How did it go?" he asked immediately. Sophia sat beside his bed, taking his hand. "As well as could be expected. The judge will rule tomorrow." "Did you present the survey maps?" "The water usage calculations," Ryan pressed, attempting to sit up before wincing in pain. "Everything," she assured him, gently easing him back against the pillows. "Every argument exactly as you prepared them." The judge listened attentively. Ryan studied her face. "And the Jacksons?" "We're the Jacksons," she said wryly, confident, slightly threatening, "but I wasn't intimidated." A smile touched his lips. "I never thought you would be." His expression grew serious. "Sophia, what you did today, I don't have words." "You would have done the same for me," she said simply. "Yes," he agreed, "but that's different." Why?" she interrupted. "Because you're a man. Because you've studied law. Because I love you," he said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, simple but profound. Sophia felt her heart racing, emotions she'd been holding at bay flooding through her. "Ryan," she began, not sure what to say. "You don't have to respond," he assured her. "I know your feelings about permanence, about forever, but nearly dying has a way of clarifying priorities. I love you, Sophia Morgan. Whatever happens tomorrow with the ruling, whatever you decide about us, that won't change." Tears filled her eyes, surprising her with their sudden appearance. "I'm not ready to say it back," she admitted. "Not because I don't feel something profound, but because those words have always been followed by loss in my experience." Ryan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know, and I'll wait until you are ready, if you ever are." She leaned forward and kissed him gently. "Rest now. Tomorrow we'll face whatever comes together." The following morning, Sophia dressed with care again, though anxiety had robbed her of sleep. Ryan's fever had broken during the night, a positive sign, but the outcome of the hearing remained uncertain. The town hall was even more crowded as Judge Harmon took his seat at the front. The Jacksons and their lawyer appeared confident, exchanging small smiles as the proceedings began. After careful review of the evidence and arguments presented, Judge Harmon began without preamble. "I find in favor of the defendant, Ryan Blackwood." A murmur ran through the crowd. Sophia felt dizzy with relief as the judge continued. "The plaintiff's claims of water deprivation are unsupported by evidence. Mr. Blackwood's usage is well within his rights as established by territorial statute and common law precedent. The injunction is denied, and the counterclaim for harassment is granted. The plaintiffs will pay court costs and a fine of $100 for frivolous litigation." The eldest Jackson's face darkened with rage as he leaned to whisper furiously to his lawyer. The judge, observing this, added a final warning. "I am also aware of certain incidents surrounding this case, including the suspicious fire at Mr. Blackwood's property and his recent injury. While no formal charges have been filed, I caution all parties that further violence or property damage will be met with the full force of territorial law." With that, he gavelled the session closed. Sophia gathered Ryan's papers with shaking hands, hardly able to believe their victory. The sheriff approached, his expression pleased. "Well done, Miss Morgan," he said warmly. The judge spoke highly of your presentation, said you'd make a fine lawyer with proper training. Thank you, Sheriff, she replied, her mind already on sharing the news with Ryan. But I should return to the mercantile. Ryan will want to know. As she hurried back with the sheriff beside her, Sophia was conscious of the Jacksons watching her from the saloon entrance, their expressions cold. The battle was won, but she suspected the war might not be over. Ryan was sitting up when she entered, his face tense with anticipation. Well, he asked immediately. We won, she said, a smile breaking across her face. Completely. The judge denied their injunction, granted your counterclaim, and fined them for frivolous litigation. The relief that washed over Ryan's features was profound. You did it, he said softly. You saved my ranch. We did it, she corrected, sitting beside him. It was your case, your arguments, I just presented them. He reached for her hand. Don't diminish what you accomplished, Sophia. You stood against men who'd intimidated this entire territory. You risked your reputation, possibly your safety. For me. For us, she said, echoing her words from before, but with new meaning now. Ryan's eyes widened slightly. For us, he repeated. Does that mean? It means I'm reconsidering some long-held beliefs, she said carefully. About permanence, about possibilities. Hope dawned in his expression. That's a start. The weeks that followed brought healing for Ryan's shoulder, for the community's perception of the Jacksons' power, and for Sophia's long-guarded heart. The first snow fell in early December, transforming the prairie into a glistening expanse of white that reminded Sophia of new beginnings. Ryan recovered his strength gradually, returning to his ranch but visiting town almost daily. The Jacksons, their influence diminished by the public court defeat, maintained a cold distance but attempted no further intimidation. As Christmas approached, Sweetwater prepared for celebration with typical frontier enthusiasm. The mercantile bustled with customers seeking gifts and supplies for holiday meals. Sophia's lending library corner had expanded, becoming a gathering place for women and children on cold afternoons. One evening as she was closing up, Ryan arrived with a small pine tree strapped to his saddle. Thought your aunt might appreciate some Christmas cheer, he explained, carrying it inside. Together, they set it up in the corner of the living quarters upstairs, decorating it with paper stars Sophia had cut and small ornaments Martha had preserved from years past. The simple domesticity of the task filled Sophia with an unexpected contentment. It's beautiful, she said when they'd finished, the tiny tree glowing with candlelight. Not as beautiful as you, Ryan replied, drawing her into his arms. They had grown comfortable with such moments of closeness, though Sophia still maintained certain boundaries. Tonight, however, as snow fell softly outside and the scent of pine filled the warm room, she felt those boundaries weakening. I've been thinking, she said, resting her head against his chest. A dangerous pastime, he teased gently. About permanence, she continued. About forever. Ryan went very still, as if afraid any movement might break the moment. And, he prompted when she didn't immediately continue, and I'm beginning to think you might be right, she admitted. Some things can last, some promises can be kept. He drew back slightly to look into her eyes. Sophia Morgan, are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I love you, she replied simply. I think I have for some time, but I was afraid to admit it, afraid of what it might mean. Joy transformed his features. And what does it mean? It means I'm staying in Sweetwater, she said. Not just for my aunt and uncle, but for myself, for us. Ryan cupped her face in his hands. Are you certain? I don't want you to ever regret. I'm certain, she interrupted, more certain than I've been about anything in years. He kissed her then, pouring all his love and promise into the embrace. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he whispered. Not immediately, when you're ready, but promise me that future. Sophia took a deep breath, standing at the threshold of the forever she'd once denied existed. Yes, she said finally, I will marry you, Ryan Blackwood. His smile was like sunrise after the longest night. I told you I'd prove forever exists. You were right, she conceded with a small laugh. Though your methods were rather dramatic, gunshot wounds seem excessive as courtship tactics. I'll try more conventional approaches in the future, he promised, kissing her again, Christmas Day dawned clear and cold, with sunlight turning the snow-covered prairie into a sea of diamonds. Sophia woke early, excitement fluttering in her stomach. Today, they would announce their engagement to her aunt and uncle, though she suspected they had already guessed. After a joyous morning exchanging simple gifts with her family, she stood by the window watching for Ryan's approach. He had promised to join them for Christmas dinner, bringing with him the ring that had belonged to his mother, a simple gold band with a small sapphire that matched his eyes. Movement on the road caught her attention, but it wasn't Ryan's familiar figure. Instead, 3 riders approached the mercantile at a steady pace. The Jacksons' anxiety tightened her chest as she called to her uncle. "The Jacksons are coming." Thomas joined her at the window, his expression concerned. "Stay inside," he advised. "I'll speak with them." "No," Sophia decided. "We'll face them together." They descended to the store level and stepped onto the porch as the brothers dismounted. The eldest approached, removing his hat in a gesture of unexpected courtesy. "Miss Morgan, Mr. Morgan, Merry Christmas," he said, his tone stiffly formal. "Mr. Jackson," Thomas acknowledged warily. "What brings you here today?" Jackson cleared his throat. "Came to speak with Miss Morgan, actually, about our disagreement." Sophia stepped forward. "I'm listening." The man seemed to struggle with his words. "Judge Harmon sent word yesterday. He's recommended my brother Peter for prosecution regarding the fire at Blackwood's ranch. Seems one of our former hands decided to clear his conscience for Christmas." Sophia's eyebrows rose in surprise. "I see, and you're here because—" "Because I underestimated you," Jackson admitted grudgingly. "And Blackwood, thought you'd run when things got difficult. You didn't, showed character. Is this an apology, Mr. Jackson?" she asked directly. "Close as you'll get to one," he replied with a hint of his old gruffness. "Also came to say we're selling the Circle B. Army's offering good money for the land, planning a new fort in the territory." This was unexpected news indeed. "What will you do?" Thomas asked. "Moving to Colorado," Jackson said. "Heard there's good ranching there without so many complications." "Or so many neighbors who stand their ground," Sophia suggested. A reluctant smile touched Jackson's weathered face. "Something like that." He extended his hand. "No hard feelings, Miss Morgan." Sophia hesitated, then accepted the gesture. "Peace is a worthy Christmas gift, Mr. Jackson." He nodded, replaced his hat, and returned to his brothers. As they rode away, Sophia felt a weight lifting that she hadn't fully acknowledged until now. "Well," Thomas said wonderingly, "miracles do happen at Christmas." "Indeed they do," a familiar voice agreed from behind them. Sophia turned to find Ryan approaching on foot, having tied his horse at the side of the building. His smile was radiant as he took in the departing Jacksons. "Did I just see what I think I saw?" he asked, mounting the steps to join them. "A Jackson apology," Sophia confirmed. "Of sorts." "And news that they're selling out to the Army." Ryan's eyebrows shot up. "That is a Christmas miracle." He turned to Thomas. "Sir, if you'll excuse us for a moment, I have something to discuss with your niece." Thomas smiled knowingly. "Take all the time you need, son. Dinner won't be ready for another hour." When they were alone on the porch, Ryan took Sophia's hands in his. "I heard what Jackson said, about you not running when things got difficult." "He underestimated both of us," she replied. "Many people have," Ryan agreed, "but never again." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I meant to do this after dinner, but it seems fitting now, with our past riding away and our future stretching before us." He opened the box to reveal the ring he'd described, a delicate gold band with a sapphire that caught the winter sunlight. "Sophia Morgan," he said solemnly, "you came to Wyoming believing nothing lasts forever. You've faced danger, uncertainty, and change with more courage than anyone I've ever known. I love you more than I thought possible, and I want to spend my life proving that forever isn't just a word, it's a promise I intend to keep. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man offering it, this steadfast, honorable man who had taught her to believe again. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, I will marry you, Ryan Blackwood." He slipped the ring onto her finger where it fit as if made for her. Then he gathered her into his arms and kissed her with all the promise of their shared future. When they finally parted, Sophia smiled up at him. "You were right, you know." "About what?" He asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Forever, she said simply. It does exist, you proved it. And I'll keep proving it, he promised. Every day for the rest of our lives. As they stood together on the porch of the Mercantile, snow beginning to fall gently around them, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just love, but the forever she'd stopped believing in. In this wild territory where nothing was guaranteed, she and Ryan had forged something lasting, a bond strong enough to withstand challenges, growth, and change. A true forever, built on courage, respect, and unwavering love. Spring came early to Wyoming territory in 1879. The snows melted, revealing tender green shoots pushing through the warming earth. Sweetwater stirred to life after the quiet winter months, with new buildings rising along the main street and fresh faces arriving on each train. Sophia stood on the porch of what was now Morgan and Blackwood's general store, watching the activity with satisfaction. The winter had brought changes. Her aunt's health had improved enough that she now helped with the lighter store duties, while Uncle Thomas managed the expanding inventory. The Army's new fort construction had increased business dramatically, and Ryan's legal knowledge had proven invaluable in negotiating contracts with suppliers. Their wedding the previous February had been simple but joyous, with the entire town turning out to celebrate. Judge Harmon himself had performed the ceremony, commenting that any woman who could argue water rights law so effectively deserved the most binding legal contract possible for her marriage. They had made their home at Ryan's ranch, though Sophia spent most days at the Mercantile. The arrangement suited them mornings and evenings together in the peaceful beauty of their land, days devoted to their respective work. Ryan's legal practice had grown steadily, with ranchers and townspeople seeking his counsel on matters ranging from property disputes to contracts. The sound of hoofbeats drew Sophia's attention, and she smiled as Ryan approached on Ember, the chestnut mare that had become his favorite mount. He dismounted with the easy grace that still made her heart skip, tying the horse to the hitching post before joining her on the porch. "Good news," he announced, kissing her lightly. "Judge Harmon has officially recommended me for admission to the territorial bar, said my practical experience and demonstrated knowledge qualify me for formal recognition." "That's wonderful," Sophia exclaimed, genuine pride warming her voice. "Though I never doubted it would happen. Your faith in me has always been humbling," he said, taking her hand. The gold band on her finger caught the sunlight, the sapphire glowing like a captured piece of sky. "How are you feeling today?" His concern was touching but unnecessary. "Perfectly well," she assured him. "Dr. Miller says everything is progressing exactly as it should." Ryan's hand moved to rest gently on her abdomen, where the slight rounding was just becoming visible beneath her dress. "And our little one, active," she laughed. "Especially when I'm trying to sleep." The wonder in Ryan's eyes whenever he thought about their coming child never failed to move her. They had discovered the pregnancy in late winter, and the baby was expected in early autumn, their own personal harvest after a year of growth and change. "I've been thinking," Ryan said, his expression growing thoughtful. "With the store expanding and my legal work increasing, perhaps we should consider building a home in town. Not to replace the ranch," he added quickly, seeing her expression, "but as a second residence for when we need to be here. Especially after the baby comes." Sophia considered the idea. She loved their ranch home with its views and privacy, but the daily ride to and from town would become impractical with an infant. "That seems sensible," she agreed, "though I'd miss our evenings on the porch watching the sunset." "We'd still have those," he promised. "Just not every night, and think of the advantages being close to your aunt and uncle, to the doctor, to the school eventually." The mention of school made the future suddenly seem very real and immediate. Their child would grow up in this place, would learn and play and form the memories that would shape a life. "Our children will have the best of both worlds," she said softly. "The freedom and beauty of the ranch and the community of town." Ryan's eyebrows rose. "Children, plural." "Something you haven't told me," she laughed at his expression. "Not yet, but someday, perhaps, if this one doesn't exhaust us completely." "Nothing worth having comes without effort," he reminded her, echoing words he'd spoken during the water rights dispute. Indeed, she agreed, leaning into his embrace. And this what we've built together is worth everything. They stood together on the porch, watching as Sweetwater went about its daily business around them. So much had changed in the year since Sophia had arrived, not just the town and their circumstances, but her very understanding of what was possible. You know, she said thoughtfully, when I first came here, I told you I didn't believe in forever. I remember, Ryan nodded. And I said I'd prove it exists. You did more than prove it, she replied, turning in his arms to face him. You helped me create it. Our forever isn't just something that exists, it's something we build every day with every choice we make. Ryan's eyes softened with emotion. That's the most beautiful definition of forever I've ever heard. It's the only one that matters, she said simply. Not unchanging permanence, but committed growth. Not static perfection, but the willingness to face challenges together. He kissed her then, tenderly and thoroughly, until someone across the street called out a good-natured tease about public displays of affection. They parted, laughing, unembarrassed by their happiness. I should return to work, Sophia said reluctantly. The new shipment of fabric needs organizing. And I have a meeting with the fort commander about their supply contracts, Ryan nodded. Dinner at the ranch tonight? I wouldn't miss it, she promised. I love our evenings there. As Ryan mounted Ember and rode toward the new fort construction, Sophia watched him go with a heart full of contentment. The journey that had brought her to Wyoming as a reluctant, disillusioned woman had transformed into a path she now walked with confidence and joy. Forever, she had learned, wasn't an illusion or a naive dream. It was a choice made daily, a commitment renewed with each sunrise. It existed in the land beneath their feet, in the community they helped build, in the child growing within her, and most of all, in the love she and Ryan shared, a love strong enough to weather storms and flourish in sunshine, enduring through all seasons of life. She had said she didn't believe in forever. He had promised to prove it existed. And together, they had discovered that the most powerful proof was not in words, but in the life they were creating day by day, moment by moment, building their forever with open hearts and steadfast love.